Welcome to Vigilant News, everybody, for December 28th, 2021. My name is Justin, founder of Stillness in the Storm, and I'm joined by my co-host, Ryan, from Underground Newswire. Ryan, how's it going?
It's going well. Good to be back.
Hope everybody had a great holiday. We have some news updates for you. And before we get started, don't forget to go to the description and check for the links, specifically stillnessinthestorm.com/donate, where you can go to support our work, either by becoming a member of Subscribestar or sending us a one-time donation. We also have the promotion for Ascent Nutrition still happening up at the top. Don't forget, you can get 10% off your first order. It means you can literally get 100 items if you want, and it's going to be 10% off everyone.
Great coffee, by the way.
Yeah, really good coffee. Mold-free coffee. So with that, let's go ahead and jump into today's news. Ryan, what do we got?
I guess we can kick this thing off with updates on the Ghislaine Maxwell trial. A lot of people thought today would be the day that the verdict was reached, but it doesn't seem likely at this point, unless it just came out and I missed it. So the jury in the Ghislaine Maxwell sex trafficking trial began its fifth day of deliberations today, Tuesday it is, as the socialite continues a long wait to see whether or not she will actually face up to 70 years that she could be facing in prison. Jurors are considering 6 charges against Maxwell, who is accused of recruiting and grooming teenage girls for convicted pedophile Jeffrey Epstein. She's pleaded not guilty to all charges, as we know. She said she's being made a scapegoat for Epstein's acts after he died in 2019 while awaiting his own trial, allegedly by suicide. Judge Allison Nathan, the Obama-appointed judge, who was also an aide to the Obama White House, extended deliberations on 6 p.m. on Tuesday, citing an, quote, astronomical spike in cases of Omicron. So sensationalizing Omicron, using every little opportunity you can get.
Interesting, yeah.
It's time to have jurors, oh, this is a quote from her, by the way. It's time to have the jurors make plans to continue deliberating until a verdict is reached, she said, noting that the Omicron surge could force jurors into quarantine and jeopardize the, quote, ability to complete this trial, which is, works for me. I mean, if they want to rush this thing because of Omicron, we'll get a verdict sooner. But I guess with that comes the possibility that they'll just settle on a verdict that is not what the people desire. But right. I guess we'll just have to see what happens.
Yeah, sounds like there might be a little shenanigans happening with Omicron too, huh?
Mm-hmm.
Okay.
The judge also balked at a defense request to provide additional jury instructions on 2 of the 6 counts against Miss Maxwell. I believe they were looking for instruction, I think it's called, in the legal sense.
Instruction?
Instruction.
Okay.
Yeah, and I think they were looking for something that had to do with the redacted flight logs, if I'm not mistaken.
Okay.
But news on that was scarce. Mostly people just wanted to talk about the Omicron deal. So that's all we really have today on Ghislaine Maxwell.
All right. Well, thanks for that, Ryan. Let's go ahead and move on to our next story, which is, I believe, where's the roster here? I think you got one about the boogeyman.
Yeah, you want me to go into
that?
Let's
go for it.
So they're pushing this whole Russia-Ukraine deal like it's going to be like World War III is going to break out at any second. And I think China and Russia are doing joint drills at the border of Ukraine. Basically, they want you to think that Russia is ruled by an objectively malevolent dictator, and that tensions with Ukraine are the result of the great RUSKI boogeyman and the continued efforts of breaking up the Soviet Union. Basically what it is it's the continued effects of breaking up the Soviet Union still playing out, but they're hijacking that and making it seem like some big war is going to break out. My question is why we are painting Russia as some huge threat while giving China, the more obvious threat, a complete free pass. From a financial standpoint, Russia only has 0.73% of the global wealth compared to China's whopping 18% of the global wealth. Hong Kong alone has more wealth than all of Russia, yet we treat Russia like it's preparing to take over the world. It's a distraction, I would say, from the enemy that has already invaded our country, that is the Chinese Communist Party. They've taken over Hollywood. They've taken over academic institutions. They've even got a figurehead president who is in their back pocket, including his family. and Sun specifically. Not to mention the scores of elected officials that they also control at the state and local levels. So I would say all of this business about Russia and Ukraine and the war breaking out is kind of just like taking the focus off of a much more bigger, dire threat.
That's right. It seems like they're trying to capitalize on all the fear mongering that happened during the Cold War. And, there's a good reason to believe that there was a good, reason to be fearful of things that could go wrong during the Cold War era. But, they spent from around the early 1950s all the way up till the 80s to saying that essentially the world could be, destroyed any minute because of the Soviet Union. So there's a lot of people that, probably associate bad things with Russia, and therefore they think, I'm assuming the cabal believes that it's easier to keep that boogeyman alive if they just pin it to Russia versus China, but there's other reasons, obviously, like China is actively, like you said, involved in trying to manipulate the US. So
yeah, it seems like it's definitely a callback to those Cold War days, but yeah, I don't know. I think it's all hype.
Right.
And yeah, I forgot what I was going to say. The point I was going to make.
But nevertheless, it's not something that we should be horribly worried about. We should be on guard about this Russia thing. But at the same time, like you said, China is really the way more imminent threat, it seems like.
Yeah, they spend so much time making Putin and Russia out to be like this imminent threat. And I'm not trying to say that, they're altruists over there. I think it's heavily KGB run over there, which they've done a bunch of terrible things. But I don't think it's as like imminent of a threat as China.
Certainly. Yeah, for those of you who are Dauntless Dialogue fans, we might actually do a video on this here at some point, but if you go to the Rumble for Dauntless Dialogue, they have the first episode of the Devolution docuseries that is up.
Oh, yeah, I just saw that they were starting a series for that.
Yeah, Adam just sent it to me. So in that, I only got a chance to watch a couple minutes where I had to jet off, but they have a speech by somebody talking about the Russian threat or the communist threat, and the communist threat materializes as socialism. So he's like, people worried about the Russians coming over, the Soviets back then, and invading. And he's basically saying, well, listen, that we shouldn't be worried about direct soldiers invading us. We should be worried about ideas in the form of socialism invading us. And guess what? It's already here. It's been here for a long time. So
actually, a piece that I just published the other day talks about that in great detail, about how mass psychosis afflicts an entire society. And that's how this kind of stuff really comes. It doesn't come by boots on the ground, soldiers coming in. It happens because it's an idea, and coupled with propaganda, pressure from below and above.
That's right.
They call it. So that's how it happens, not actual troops invading a nation.
Exactly. And that Yuri Bezmenov interview that has been making the rounds lately, who's a former KGB asset, I believe. Yeah, so great story. Good reporting there. Okay, let's jump to the, I'm going to do the CBS reporter, and then we'll go to the FBI Whitmer thing.
Okay.
So this is actually a really good clip. I'm going to just let her do the talking for us, and then we'll comment on it here in a second. So give me one moment. Let me get it all queued up here. Okay, here we go.
Well, I want to get to underreported stories as well. Jan?
Oh, for me, I mean, my kids hear me rant about this every day, so I may as well tell you guys. It's the crushing impact that our COVID policies have had on young kids and children. By far, the least serious risk for serious illness. But I mean, even teenagers, a healthy teenager has a 1 in a million chance of getting and dying from COVID, which is way lower than dying in a car wreck on a road trip. But they have suffered and sacrificed the most, especially kids in underrepresented at-risk communities. And now we have the Surgeon General saying there's a mental health crisis among our kids. The risk of suicide attempts among girls now up 51% this year. Black kids nearly twice as likely as white kids to die by suicide. I mean, school closures, lockdowns, cancellation of sports. You couldn't even go on a playground in the DC area without cops scurrying, shooing the kids off. Tremendous negative impact on kids. And it's been an afterthought. You know, it's hurt their dreams, their future, learning loss, risk of abuse, their mental health. And now with our knowledge, our vaccines, if our policies don't reflect a more measured and reasonable approach for our children, they will be paying for our generation's decisions the rest of their lives. And that to me is the greatest underreported story of the past year.
Just shocking that she actually managed to say something like that.
Yeah, I heard that actually got cut off in mid when they were airing it live.
So that could just be like a clip sneaked out of the studio kind of thing.
Well, it looked like that was their tweet. So
yeah, that's what it looked like. So it makes me wonder, you know, I don't know. I do know that placation is a big facet of the media. The very fact that something is being spoken about in the media tends to ease people because they think, oh, well, somebody knows about it, therefore, you know, there might be some action taken to solve the problem. But you know, the fact that they are talking about the child issue, which is huge, it's totally true. As a matter of fact, I've been pouring a lot more through the child research recently. I've always been studying it for a while, especially the past few years. But I took a break somewhat because I was researching other things. Got back into it as a result of the research we've been doing for the Ghislaine Maxwell trial. And something like 80% of children are affected by subtle traumas that just don't show up in a normal setting. So what that means is that all throughout our society, not just here in the United States, but likely all over the world, our children are being affected by their living conditions, but we don't have the tools to detect it. And we've been kind of blinded and numbed to these things. And this COVID situation, these COVID policies are essentially creating a situation where not only can our COVID policies with respect to the kids be addressed and acknowledged, but we can actually start to look at everything with respect to children and how our kids are being treated. And this is a perfect example. So yeah, it's tragic, but I'm glad that some attention is being put on this.
So what happened was they cut it out when it actually aired on television, but they put this clip out on Twitter beforehand and the clip went viral. So if they would, I guess they decided, you know, too many people saw the clip to delete it. It was probably posted in many articles such as this one.
Right.
And that if they were to delete it, it would show up as a deleted thing. So they had to leave it there. But when it actually aired on television, they cut her whole section out.
Got it. Interesting. Yeah, it's got 2.5 million views, the one we just saw. So it's just a pretty good chunk of views. But you know, it's nothing too damning either. It's like anybody who spent more than a second thinking about these things is like, yeah, of course what you said is true. You know, so yeah, good to have this information out there. Let's go ahead and move to the Whitmer file on this one. I got to pull up the image for this because it just, let me show you guys what this image is here. Every time I see this woman, like, you know, exactly. She just, I don't even know what she sounds like. I don't think I've heard her talk like once, but she's got this like, you know, Wicked Witch of the West kind of look at to her for some reason.
She was almost the vice president.
Was she really? Oh boy.
She was up for consideration. She met with Biden a couple times.
Wow. So yeah, you know, does that mean that we should judge her by her appearance? Of course not. And that's not what I'm saying. But you know, interestingly enough, there is a lot of compelling research to suggest that the various facial appearances that people tend to get grafted into them as they age is often because of unprocessed trauma and life experiences. No doubt that, you know, in all likelihood, Whitmer, if she's a card-carrying member of the deep state, has experienced a tremendous amount of personal trauma.
Makes me think of John D. Rockefeller when he's trying to smile.
Oh, yeah, exactly.
It's the most horrifying thing I've ever seen.
Yeah, it's pretty crazy. Or Hillary Clinton. I mean, look at her smile. But in any case, let me turn it to you. So what's going on with Whitmer here?
Gretchen Whitmer, she is the governor from the state that I just moved from, Michigan. And man, I tell you, she's popular in the inner cities. But if you leave a municipal area, you'll see people with their yards filled with anti-Gretchen Whitmer signs, like
Mm-hmm.
arrest her, all that kind of stuff. So she's about on par with Hillary Clinton as far as Michiganders are concerned.
Mm-hmm.
But this story is about the FBI inventing a conspiracy to kidnap Gretchen Whitmer.
Wow.
So lawyers representing the 5 men who have been charged with the plot to kidnap Gretchen Whitmer are asking a judge to dismiss all charges by claiming that the FBI fabricated the entire plan in an attempt to trap them in conspiracy.
Wow.
It was the Daily Mail who reported on this originally. They reported that Barry Croft, 44, Adam Fox, 40, Caleb Franks, Daniel Harris, 23, and Brandon Caserta were all arrested in October of last year for allegedly planning to kidnap Whitmer. And I think it came out not too long after that, because even some of the most normie friends that I have were like aware of the FBI's involvement in this and thought that was really weird. So here's a quote from the report. The government initiated this case despite the fact that it knew there was no plan to kidnap, no operational plan, and no details about how a kidnapping would occur or what would happen afterwards, according to defense lawyer Scott Graham. He wrote that in his motion, which is 20 pages long. The motion went on to claim that were it not for the FBI informant embedded within the group known as Dan, who encouraged the plot and pledged to fund it through a charity organization, the men never would have hatched the plan on their own.
Mm-hmm.
Though the men discussed the plot in secret meetings and via text messages with the FBI, claiming that they trained for it, their lawyers alleged that they had such little money that they would not even be able to travel to Whitmer's home to carry it out. Wow. That's kind of
That's revealing.
Yeah, it's revealing. Another quote. The evidence here demonstrates egregious overarching by the government's agents and by the informants. Those agents handled, the motion stated. When the government was faced with evidence showing that the defendants had no interest in kidnapping in a kidnapping plot, it refused to accept failure and continued to push its plan. I believe it was something like, of the 14 people that were accused of hatching this plot, 12 of them were FBI informants.
Wow.
So that just goes to show you.
Yeah.
I wrote about this back when we were talking about the FBI, how it has seemingly no oversight.
Mm-hmm.
It's just like a task force for the political elite, and they don't serve the people at all. They actually are using the FBI as a tool to fight against the people and trap them in things like January 6th.
Right. Yep. Yep. Yeah. Well, it's interesting because as we discussed that one time, there is a whole book that was written by, actually, while you were talking, I was trying to pull it up. If you're on Rumble, you're watching this, go ahead and just read, and you're watching it live, I should say, refresh the page and check the links in the description. I just put a book in there called Terror Factory. I'm going to share the screen real quick because I want to show people about this. This is really important. So this book is all about the compelling, shocking, and gritty intrigue related to the FBI literally manufacturing terror events. Now, admittedly, I haven't actually read the book myself, but I know of the story and I know of the cases that are out there. Essentially, the story is this. The FBI, ever since 2001 or September 11th, was essentially working to try to arrest and track down and take care of terrorism, right? And at the time, we all thought it was a really important thing. And, to be sure, real terrorism does exist. That being said, it turns out that I think it was literally like 37 out of the 38 times that terrorists were arrested and apprehended, it was partially due to manufacturing. So what I mean by that is, just like you were talking about with Whitmer, they'd find a bunch of gullible people. They'd plant the idea in their head by putting informants and assets around them that, hey, you should go commit this terror attack. They'd hook them up with a bomb expert. They'd basically give them everything they need to commit this crime. They bring the person to the place where the crime is going to get committed. And then right as they're about to commit the crime, they rush in and arrest the guy and say, hey, look, we got another terrorist. It sounds like this is exactly what they did to Whitmer. So if you're interested in that, go ahead and check that out. This is actually the ISIS edition of the book. There's another version of the book.
Wow. Yeah, you mentioned this Terror Factory.
Yeah, there might even, let me just take a look real quick while I'm here. Is this going to let me do it?
Yeah, the FBI has
That's
a
not-
pretty
okay.
murky track record in recent years. I mean,
Right.
they're the ones who are directly implicated in all the FISA business
There we
that
go.
we heard about for years during the Trump administration. So the FBI is far flung from its original purpose.
That's right. Exactly. So yeah, I'm going to go ahead and get the other book in there too, because this is really important things to know. If we don't vet and take care of these false, essentially, events, because it's false because people believe that the Whitmer thing was totally and completely concocted by other people, that the FBI was maybe just investigating. It's not like the news is talking about how the FBI essentially, entrapped these people in committing a crime. But we need to know about this because our whole reality is based on the FBI, supposedly, and our law enforcement agencies supposedly busting terrorists. And who's to say if they actually did? Now, does that not mean that there are no such thing as real terrorists? Well, no, of course not. I mean, but we just need to know the nitty-gritty details, and so that we can vet out if we're actually dealing with real terrorists or if we're dealing with some manufactured type of situation. So again, I'm going to put the other book, the first book, in the links. Go ahead and check that out. If you're watching on YouTube, it should already be there, and you can just look at it and enjoy and read it and let us know what you think. All right, so with that, I'm just going to finish updating this here real quick. And I'm going to jump into our next story. And our next story is about something that is, I've been researching for quite some time. I started getting into it way back in like 2014, 15. And then as I started doing a lot more psychology research, I discovered a lot more about it. And that's the FBI's involvement and the CIA's involvement, in the satanic ritual abuse phenomenon. So for those of you who don't know, in the 80s, I believe it was in the mid 80s, there's a lot of people coming out saying that there was satanic ritual abuse happening, that families were Satanists and they were involved in doing horrific crimes to their children, people in the community, all sorts of things. And this was coming from people who supposedly had regressed memories surface as a result of therapy and sometimes hypnosis. And without getting the full spiel, it was determined by a group of experts that are highly dubious that all of these memories were bogus, all made up, all implanted false memories by psychologists and hypnotists that just accidentally, did it and didn't know what they were doing. Well, as Elizabeth Loftus admitted in the Ghislaine Maxwell trial, that's not actually the case, in the sense that they have yet been able to implant a sexual abuse memory in a person. So if it's so easy, and a psychologist can do it so easily that they don't even know they're doing it, which is the claim, this is the whole basis for why we should not believe in the satanic ritual abuse phenomenon, then why can't they reproduce it at all? And they've been trying to do it for 40 years, 40 plus years now.
Yeah. At one point, there were thousands of psychologists in jail or in the middle of their trials being accused of implanting these fake memories that somehow the people who actually are the experts on cannot recreate. It just doesn't make any sense.
It doesn't make any sense. And then, again, well, I'm not going to go into it because there's a lot to cover, but I just want to say that when you're looking at whether or not something is true or not, so from a discernment perspective, if I tell you that there's a claim and and you can go out into the world and you can see all these different things that match the claim, like, hey, is it raining outside? You go outside, there's water in the ground, it's cloudy, you can see water falling from the sky. Those are 3 signs that let you know there's probably, my claim is probably true, that it is actually raining and it was raining outside. So in this case, we have files released related to the finders, and the finders were well, here, I'll just read some of it. Russ Winter of Winter Watch published an article earlier this month, let me zoom it in for y'all, December 2021, about the FBI declassifying files on the CIA group called The Finders and the McMartin preschool satanic child trafficking case in Los Angeles in the 1980s. Yes, you read that right. We have referenced this case and the secret CIA group, The Finders, in the past here at Health Impact News, as former FBI Chief Ted Gunderson was actively involved in the case, which we reference in our June 2020 article. After retiring from the FBI, Gunderson set up a private investigation firm, Ted Gunderson and Associates, in Santa Monica, In 1995 conference in Dallas, Gunderson warned about the proliferation of secret satanic groups and the danger posed by the New World Order, a shadow government that controls the US government. Gunderson discovered that in the US, there is a secret widespread network of groups who kidnap children and infants and subject them to satanic ritual abuse and subsequent human sacrifice. One of those groups is the Finders, which Gunderson said is operated by the CIA. He wrote the book on the Finders, which can still be downloaded from his website. Ted Gunderson died in 2011. This is the same CIA group that the FBI just declassified many of the files from the investigation into the Finders, although many names remain redacted to protect the guilty. Gunderson traveled around the country giving lectures about his work, which included cases that led him to discover the hidden groups involved with the satanic occult, which included child sex abuse and child sacrifice. His general lecture was about 4 hours long, but there is a 1 hour lecture still available today. So, there's a lot to go over here. I'm not going to be able to pour through everything, but I just want to show you that the files are definitely real. There's multiple videos in this, so this isn't just like a one and done, kook who happened to think he could pull the wool over on people's eyes. There's a large case, a body of evidence to go for support this.
And now the FBI has released their files on it. I mean, it's partially redacted, but it's now a matter of fact.
That's right.
On the FBI's actual website.
That's right. And if you're wondering, like, oh, Justin, you're just showing us some article from somebody we can't trust. Well, here's the files right here.
And yeah, it does get flung around, child sacrifice, child munching, and all that a lot. And people will make wild accusations based on something that somebody they saw on the internet say. But that doesn't mean there's not truth to this stuff.
That's right.
And I mean, it's up to you to go through and look at these files, if you want to believe in it or not. Yeah.
Exactly. And this is something I'm going to be actively doing. So just to put a bow on this thing here, the biggest reason for why the whole idea was dismissed is because the concept, the notion of false memories being implanted was widely accepted. So the idea is that, well, if a child comes to you during therapy and says they remember all these things, and then you do an investigation, you find evidence that doesn't prove it like with photographs, but suggests that there might be something here. And somebody says, oh, no, it's all BS because the kid made up the memories or he had the memories falsely implanted, then that supposedly dispels the whole notion. But that concept is untenable. The idea that you can implant false memories to the degree that the False Memory Institute or False Memory Foundation suggests is untrue. False Memory Syndrome Foundation. I just want to make sure it's correct so that people can investigate. So yeah, I'm going to leave it there. We're going to have more stuff coming out about this as time goes on. And yeah, pretty interesting story. So let's go ahead and move on to our next story, which is, I think it's this
natural immunity research.
Yeah.
And the nail in the coffin, the last nail in the coffin for immunity deniers. So it is one of the great mysteries of the pandemic. Why have mainstream journalists, public health officials, and America's elected leaders ignored the reality of natural immunity? Enter a new study on natural immunity published in the European Journal of Immunology. The cutting edge research shows that not only is natural immunity effective, it is superior to vaccinated immunity because it lasts much longer. Here's a quote from the report. Most subjects develop antibodies to SARS-CoV-2 following infection. In order to estimate the duration of immunity induced by SARS-CoV-2, it is important to understand for how long antibodies persist after infection in humans. We found that NAB, natural antibodies against the WT virus, B lineage variants, persisted 89% in that S-IgG in 97% subjects at least 13 months after infection. So you might want to take a look at some of this for more of the scientifically minded people in our audience. We have some charts and images that we can show you, but basically suck on that, big pharma. Nature's immunization system beats your ineffective, albeit lucrative products all day long, every day of the week. So we can examine some of the results. The study's results show the overwhelming majority of subjects received natural immunity from prior infection, regardless of whether their case was severe or mild. The researchers also sought to assess if natural immunity to certain variants of concern can be expected to protect against future variants. It is important to note that the Center for Disease Control and Prevention refused to accept the presence of antibodies as demonstrated of natural immunity to COVID-19. The CDC insists on every eligible person getting vaccinated regardless of prior infection. But here's the funny thing. There is no credible scientific reasoning provided for this. Only a vague appeal that it is hard to test for the specific antibodies provided by the vaccines. Needless to say, that is not a valid argument.
Right.
And there is a glaring conflict of interest because the CDC is funded by such companies as Moderna and Pfizer, which we have detailed greatly in previous articles that we published. Despite all this hoopla, a study published just 10 days ago in Nature Immunology shows that children have an even more robust natural immunity response than adults. And there's plenty of charts and graphs to go with this in the article, which we will have in the description of the video. So
That's right.
check that out.
Yeah, that's, I mean, no surprise here. I think anybody who has dealt with any type of flu, colds, mumps, chicken pox, I mean, this has been common knowledge for most of human history, and it's actually true as far as I can tell. But the fact that natural immunity has come under assault is just one of the latest launches of gaslighting by the cabal, out there. So, well, let's go ahead and wrap this up with, something really funny happened. I think it was on Thursday, was it? That I wanted to show everybody here. Let's see, do I have it pulled up already? Yes, I do. Okay.
Happened when No Red was tracking Santa's sleigh.
Yeah. And if you haven't, I'm sure everybody's probably seen this like 1,000 times, but we're gonna watch it just one more time because I think it's hilarious and I just wanted to say something about it. So here we go. So what's happening there?
I hope you have a wonderful
Hey,
Christmas.
Yeah, I hope you guys have a wonderful Christmas as well. Merry
Thank
Christmas and let's go, Brandon.
Let's go, Brandon. I agree. Hey,
You see her face?
Yeah.
So she handled it pretty well, all things considered. He has no clue what that means.
He knows what it means.
You think so?
Definitely. I don't even think he's nearly as demented as people want to say he is. I think it's because they know that they need to switch him out, and plausible deniability for every act of treason he's committed since taking office. So that's my theory. Not saying that that's exactly the truth. So,
Right.
but this whole thing, this Let's Go Brandon phenomena, CNN recently, one of the reporters said it's slow moving insurrection to allow people to keep saying, let's go Brandon.
Yeah, we have this thing called freedom of speech. I know the communists over there, they don't really understand these things, but freedom of speech is real. It is a God-given right. It was codified by the Constitution. It wasn't granted to us by the Constitution, contrary to what some people believe. So, my take on it is that I think that Biden could himself be like an MK Ultra victim. I don't necessarily know if the guy's like even compus mentis. I'm not so sure if he does know what "Let's Go Brandon" means. I think she knows what it means because she scoffs. You can see her face. I'm sure if Bombard Body Language may have already done a video on this, but her face, her eyebrows lift up. She kind of scoffs at the fact that happened. So. But in any case, I think it demonstrates for the people that this is another more proof of concept for the fact that Biden is an empty shirt. The emperor is wearing no clothes, which isn't necessarily amazing good news that, Trump is just going to rush in or somebody else is going to rush in and take the White House and, the good guys are going to win. They could use this as a pretext to get him out and have Kamala Harris be president.
Or Hillary Clinton,
or Hillary
for example,
Clinton,
who is just sharing photos of her in the White House recently.
Exactly. So. Interesting stuff. Well, thanks everybody for watching. That's all we got for you right now. We might do a stream later tonight. Not sure. Probably tomorrow night. We're going to keep putting out content, so let us know what you think about all this. And don't forget to check the links in the description. We put those books in there we were talking about. All the links that we've shown here today are all in the description. We know you guys like that, so we put that in there. So thanks so much. Thanks for your support. Don't forget to go to stillnessinthestorm.com/donate to support our work. And also, please like and share and subscribe. That definitely helps us too. So with that, thank you so much, everybody, and have a great rest of your day. Take care.